Hey YouTube, it's the 40 Watt Garage. Welcome to the channel, or welcome back. We're getting close to the last steps of the installation of the Whitby motor car soft top, and the last phases of this are going to be drilling the tops of the doors for ferrules so we can mount the side window curtains. This is looking to be one of the more difficult parts of the job because you have to be very precise with the placement of those holes. Unlike the main top bow can move in, move out, forward, backward a little bit. There's no real locked center to center distance for that bow to come down and click into. You can wiggle it and move it and thunk, it goes in. The side curtains don't have that luxury. The mounting pins for those are fixed, they're welded in position, and the sockets in the doors have to be dead on for those to drop into place. You can't flex it or move it, it just has to fit. So precision measurement and craftsmanship are paramount during this phase. I highly suggest that you read through the instructions and then get your head really wrapped around what you're intending to do, what your procedure is going to be, and measure it, double check, remeasure it, step back, think about it, because this is really where the non-symmetry and the differences between my car, your car, the other cars on the road, the differences between them all come to play here. No two cars are the same. You take nothing for granted. Treat the driver's side and the passenger side as separate projects. Only the numbers, the distance between these pins stays constant. Everything else is a variable between the sides of the same car. So again, measure, check, double check, step back and stare at it for a while, and then proceed. You should have a copy of your installation booklet, and then included with the top is this drawing that shows dimensions for the door window locations, the holes for the locations. And then also there is an addendum to installing the ferrules in the tops of the doors. And this sheet also has the template. And then there are also links to where you can go to Whitby's website and download a copy of these documents. This sheet is going to be your friend for the next several hours, and that's what we're going to be referring to back and forth when I call out a dimension or something and while I'm working. So this is my reference point for those numbers. What I've done is laid a strip of wide masking tape across the top edge of the door, leading back to where the main hoop ferrule and the first lift dot are. Then the thinner green tape starts from the very point of the windshield frame and is stretched back to a point that is midway between the centers of your main support bow and your first lift dot. So right here is the center line between those 2 points. And then there is the center of the rear of the windshield sidebar. And that refers to this drawing where you have your windshield post center line going back to a point midway between your lift the dot and your main hoop ferrule. So the green tape, the inside edge marks that imaginary center line. We'll be working from that line throughout this procedure. The first dimension called out is 5 inches rearward of the windshield post on the top of the door. So we take my scale, put it against the bottom of the windshield post in the center along my tape line, and here is my 5-inch mark. Now, if you go back to the introduction when I said we're worried about obstructions, this is where they want you to watch out and be aware of. This is my 5-inch mark. And then I have drawn 2 other lines, a 1/4 inch either side of it, to represent where the 1/2 inch hole, or correctly 29/64 hole for the ferrule, is going to go through. The overall diameter of that ferrule is a 1/2 inch. So that's where these 2 lines come into play. My area of concern is this flat surface here under the lip of the door, because we're going to be drilling in pretty close to it. And you don't want to drill and break out the edge or skate down the inside of this surface and get crooked. So I've set my square to roughly the depth of that, where it goes down and hits the flat. I can't do anything about this radius at the top other than know that it's there. But I've set the square to approximate that depth. If I take that up on top, here's my 5-inch line. And I lay the square down. See where the end of the square bisects the center of where my hole is going to be? And that's not taking into account the thickness of this. And I'm going to assume that it is a minimum of an 1/8 inch thick. So if I add an 1/8 of an inch to my square, I've added an 1/8 of an inch of depth to the square, and that puts the center of my hole right on my projected X-ray vision depth of that inner structure. So I believe on the driver's side here, I am going to fudge my hole 1/4 of an inch rearward. I'm what you could call a visual learner, so I can't visualize things in my head easily, nor flip them inside out or sideways. I kind of have to build either templates or models to help me to understand things. So what I've done is I've cut out a cardboard template that fits inside the windshield frame, runs along the door, and then I have drawn where the top approximates the window opening, and then I have marked my 5-inch point and my 24 1/2 inch point, and then where the door gaps are. I have the driver's side window insert laying out on the table, and I have transposed the location of the pins with China marker onto the front of fabric. And I'm going to take my cardboard door template and lay my 5-inch mark and the 24.5 mark along this bottom stitch line. The bottom stitch line is as far as the door insert could possibly go down. And this front edge approximates the rear of my windshield frame sidebar. And you can see where the window insert, the gasket will fall and seal against that. My question is if I move the door insert rearward a 1/4 inch so I have clearance to drill this hole for the ferrule, what is it going to do with my front alignment and my rear alignment? So I'm going to slide my template forward approximately a 1/4 inch. I still don't have any problem with the front seal. And then at the back, it's going to be a little close on my approximate window opening in the top. Not going to be a lot of overlap, but some. So I believe that I am going to be safe shifting my hole dimensions 1/4 inch. I just don't want to hit that inner structure of the door drilling this hole. We're on the driver's side of the car here, and using that square, I drew a line that represents the outer edge of that internal interference, and then, being generous, added about 1/8 inch, colored it in. So if you could had x-ray vision looking through, and you can see that that inner structure ends right about exactly where that 5-inch mark falls on my car. So if I was to drill a 1/2 inch hole here, I would blow out the side of that structure inside. So I am definitely going to have to move my location for the holes on this side. Now, just to reinforce how different these cars are from side to side and from car to car, I measure here approximately 1 1/8 inch. I did the same procedure with the square on the passenger side of the car. You can see my 5-inch center line and my projected hole diameter either side of that line. Using the square, I transposed the measurement of that structure, added my 1/8 or so inch thickness for the fiberglass, and measuring on the passenger side of the car, I'm coming up with 7/8 of an inch. Same car, but 1/4 inch difference between sides. So take nothing for granted. Measure. Driver's door and passenger door, 1/4 inch is pretty significant difference. Visually, can't tell. Can't see both sides of the car at the same time. But if you have to drill some precision holes, you have to measure. I think I'm going to fudge my hole on this side rearward about a 1/16, just to be safe. This is where we're going to get into drilling the hole in the car. And all of the measuring and double checking involved is in reference to this surface right here. Because what you do not want to do is drill down and hit the edge or the top of this, blow it out, or skate in sideways. Like I said in a previous episode, I'm a visual learner. I need to make a jig or a model or something to kind of get my head wrapped around things. So this is just a cardboard piece. It's curved in the front. I punch the ferrule through. So if we flip it over, that's kind of what we're trying to do. We've got that sidewall, and we want to run that hole for the ferrule and just miss the inside of it. So that is why all of the measurements, the dark line represents that wall that we need to avoid. And on my particular car, I've had to move my measurements rearward about 1/4 of an inch. So I've measured this, erased my markings, measured it again. I've had somebody else come and take a look at it with a fresh set of eyes. They agree. So now it's just time to bite it and drill the hole. Okay. What I'm doing here is I am checking to see that I can get in here and drill this hole perpendicular and parallel to the floor without any obstructions, whether it be the top or the fabric, or in this case, the windshield frame. I'm going to be drilling right there, and it appears that if I go in this direction, I won't have any clearance issues. So I am going to, as I did before, I'm going to lay that bit on my mark, twirl it by hand with some downward pressure, and give me a little center punch divot to get started with. On my particular car, I have photographs in the bodywork phase. There is quite a bit of filler in this area before you hit the fiberglass. So as I drill, you're going to see different colors of material come out. Using the same Christmas tree or step bit with my stop here mark on it. The one thing that I did not check is am I going to break through the underside with the tip of this bit before I get to 7/16. That is something I really ought to check right now. This is why you check and double check. This step bit is too long before it gets to my 7/16 inch mark. The point in one step of this would have probably broken through the other skin on the other side of the area that I'm drilling. It's too long before it would have broken through before I got to this. I have a different step bit. I've marked it at 7/16, and it will not break out the other side. So I am going to start with this one. It takes smaller bites. So I'm going to go down to the 1/4 inch mark, which is what the pilot on this one starts at. Change bits and then finish out the hole. Wish me luck. Get started in my registered hole. I'm going to go for it. Now my hand reamer bottoms out before I can open this hole up to the 29/64. I missed the inner structure of that barrier where this dark pencil line is. I'm about 1/16 of an inch away. But I can go straight down to that mark. Ferrule. So it looks like I've got plenty of clearance. Moving my holes on my car, moving them back 1/4 inch allowed me to do that hole. If I would have drilled at the prescribed 5 inches back, I would have been right on top of that inner wall and blown the sides out, and it would have made a mess. Well, seeing as I can't use my hand reamer to bring the hole out to its required diameter, I have gotten the 29/64 bit, and with the overage of the step bit, I think I am just going to gently try to twirl this in by hand and cut this hole out to its proper size. So I can swing this out of the way now, and I'm going to set the bit into the hole, but not against where I need to cut, and start it there. And that's all it took. And my tap wrench won't make this swing either. So I am just going to set it into place and barely get it started, and close the door. Check for my parallelism to the floor. And vertical. So once I get a few threads started in the proper plane, it'll continue to cut along that plane. There I have my threads. Well, here's the moment of truth. Modified my little ferrule installation bolt, cut the end off as we're going into a blind hole. And will it go all the way down without hitting anything? Round and round she goes, and where she stops is right where it contacts this upper surface, and that is without the O-ring or a rubber gasket. It's not going to pull down flush here because the contour of the door, and it's drilled perpendicular. I think we may have to do a little silicone sealant or something in here, but the ferrule goes all the way in without hitting anything. Gotta love it. Now to lay out and drill the rear hole, 24 1/2 inches back, See if I can make lightning strike twice. Here's my mark for the rear hole on the driver's door, and just checking here, when I hit my depth on my step bit, the bottom of the door tapers away much more drastically in this area, so I don't have a problem of punching through the other side with this step bit. Another thing to just double check. Like the forward hole, I'm gonna start a little divot here for myself, right on my tape line and pencil line. And then I am able to get in and drill perpendicular and parallel without any obstructions. And there is my tape line. It's funny, after all of the nervousness that you go through trying to work yourself up to it, and you pull that trigger and zip, it's too late now. So I wonder if my reamer, oh, it's just hitting with just a tiny bit to go. Well, we'll do the same thing as we did before. We'll take the drill bit. Okay, I've got it started enough. And again, I'll get the bit in the hole. And then put the power to it. And I just realized something myself here. If you're going to use a cordless drill to do this job, you should check that your cordless drill, the chuck, will accept a bit this large, or you may have to purchase a reduced shank bit to fit your particular drill. Something to check. And as before, I am going to get the tap started, a couple of turns, get some thread started. Like I did on the main hoop ferrule holes, got a countersinking bit, and I'm going to by hand gently twirl this. Let's thread in some ferrules. It's contacting on this back edge. First one. Well, moment of truth. I have the driver's side window insert. Open the door. Front pin, rear pin. And look at that. They drop right in. When you close the door, just off the top right now, you're going to get significantly less wet. I'm just very happy that those holes lined up and it dropped into place that easily. Now to finish the installation of the ferrules on this side.